Some of us are outwardly successful, but inwardly feel unhappy and living a life lacking in purpose and meaning. The Necktie and the Jaguar by Carl Greer can help you discover what's important to you and how to go for it. For more information or to purchase the book, visit carlgreer.com. That's CARLGREER.com. Welcome to Voice Rising with Kara Johnstad. Enjoy weekly conversations with leading luminaries, pioneering visionaries, singers, poets, musicians, and sound healers as we explore the profound role our voice plays on the path to self-realization and global enlightenment. The internationally acclaimed singer, composer, author, healer, recording artist, voice expert, creator of Voice Your Essence, and founder of the School of Voice, Kara Johnstad uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower others. Everything in this world vibrates. Everything has a frequency. A pioneer in the field of voice work and transformational songwriting, her breakthrough methods are helping thousands of people worldwide fine-tune their body-mind-spirit system and unlock the energetic frequencies of limitless creativity, health, and abundance. Share your voice, ask your questions, join in the conversation. Receive life-changing, positive transformation and rise together to create a sound world. And here's your host, Kara Johnstad.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. With me in studio today is the author and spiritual teacher, Bridget Finklaire, and we're going to be diving into the transformational power of voice, spiritual adventures, and her brand new book called Red Dress. Welcome, Bridget, to the show.
Thank you so much, Kara, for having me. It's my absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it feels so good. Bridget, you hold the vision of people awakening to the truth of who they are so they can live fulfilling and meaningful lives with joy, with purpose. And you do this in private coachings. You also do this in groups. As we each take that responsibility and do it for ourselves and work as a collective, what I would say, share more about the vision that you hold and the work that you're currently cultivating for our world.
Oh, awesome. It's actually listening to your introduction, I can see that we're in alignment here about vibrational frequencies and, finding your truth and your intuition and consciousness, and all of these things are part and parcel. Mm-hmm. And I believe that there are many people doing this great work across the world, light workers, and we're weaving together this new reality. Because if we look at what's been going on, particularly in the last couple of years, we're kind of living in a broken world. And we could go back to scripture and look at that, and we can go back to ancient teachings and wisdom teachings to look at how or why. But really, what we need to look at and think about, in my view, is that we're standing in a gateway moment. We're either going to spiral up and take that path of the light and take that path of joy and do what we came here to do, what our souls came here to do, use our gifts and talents, be joyous. And then it's a ripple effect that just emanates out. And if you think about it, if every single person was using their gifts and talents, was doing what they loved, doesn't mean life's going to be easy. There's still going to be challenges in life. But if they essentially had an overarching feeling that they were going in a purposeful direction and they just loved their lives, then there would be no need for greed and war and corruption and all of these, control and confusion and all of the things that playing out a lower frequency. So we can raise that vibration, raise that frequency collectively. And at that point, our thoughts and our visions and what we focus on and the emanations of joy that we give that are actually paving the way to create the future. So if we're collectively doing that, that's incredibly powerful. And we have that ability. We don't realize how powerful we are as human beings. We were made in the image and likeness of the great creator, whether you want to call that source or God or whatever you want to call creation itself. We're made as part of creation to create, and we create in many ways, but it starts with an idea and a dream. And I think if we can follow that, we can all create a new way of being and a new world and a new a new humanity, really. It's an evolution in humanity to take this upward spiral of light, to take this growth in consciousness and to raise our frequency and vibration. But, you can't do that alone. It's like being the foundation for a house. One brick isn't going to hold up your building. It's got to take many bricks to hold up this new building, this new house, this new edifice. And that's really, I believe, it's in this moment now, many of us have chosen to be here now to do this work, to build that foundation for what's to come. So it seems to me a hugely important thing that we're all involved in. And I love that saying, many hands make light work. So because there's many hands are doing this work of the light.
That's true. So true. Amen. Beautiful. Beautifully said. You have a new book. It's called Red Dress, and it is a spiritual adventure. It did remind me a tiny bit of Eat, Pray, Love in this kind of, the main character is going on the adventure of how do I find my passion and tap into my intuition. She is a career mom in her 40s. Her name is Katie, and she's totally stressed out, time-starved, disenchanted, and yet has an incredibly quote-unquote successful life, right? She has a successful husband. She has her house. She has her 2 kids. She's doing everything probably correctly, as everything we've learned. She has a therapy practice that's thriving, and yet she feels empty and lost. And she embarks on this journey pretty much by chance. I think a lot of people, it happens like that. A book falls off the shelf. It happens that suddenly someone says, oh, I just did a past life regression, or by the way, my sister has cancer, but she met somebody who is helping her change her diet. Or I think a lot of us do end up making this shift in a way by chance, although it's not by chance, right? And
absolutely.
Right. I mean, it is this beauty of coincidences that lead us to where we need to be. You don't have to tell me the secrets inside this book. Everybody should go get it. It's at John Pond Publishing. But a lot to how she finds her joy and happiness has to do with a connection to voice and also vibrational wellness, what you were talking about before, tapping into joy, tapping into her intuition. Share with us a little bit more about the intuitive voice and about your leading character, Katie, and how she gets in touch with her voice, or her true
Fabulous
voice.
Question.
I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point of it, isn't it? Really, that there's the chatter of the outside world and what we should do and what we're expected to do, and then there's the authentic voice, which is the real us rather than the puppet us. And it kind of feeds a little bit, it's a kind of almost a primer into the Bone Circle training, which is the training program that I designed, where I say, look, we have a luminous being, which is part of us. Our soul self is this luminous, huge, wonderful being of creative spirit, really. And then we have a smaller self, which is really the ego that's got conditioned to be here. And we believe, I think a lot of people who, until they awaken to some kind of spiritual journey, believe that the small self is the be all and end all and all that there is. And then when we awaken, we go, oh, no, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. But actually, I would take it further than that and say we are that greater, luminous, creative, pure spirit, and we have to express through this smaller self. And I think it's the smaller self that goes on this kind of journey of the success, and ticking all the boxes and doing all the right things and having that career and, all the rest of it that Katie does in Red Dress. But ultimately, it's not always what the soul or the luminous self, the spiritual creative side of us really wanted. It's been shaped and formed by society, by teachers, by friends and by parents and all the era that we grew up in. There's many things that shape and form what we believe we have to do. But actually, when we get there, it's a Pyrrhic victory because it's empty. And this is where Katie is. This is where we find her at the beginning of Red Dress. And so she is lost in the chaos and confusion and in the total burnout of trying to be the best mother she can be and be a wife to this, in this kind of loveless marriage, really, that's gone wrong, but she hasn't really seen that yet. And just too busy juggling too many plates. And so she starts to question. And it's interesting what you were saying about how the path just opens up for people in that coincidence or not, because I think that's absolutely right. I think there's a serendipitous unfolding, but it begins with somewhere making a choice or asking for something. It starts with somebody saying, oh my goodness, I can't handle whatever's happened. And often it is something like illness or a bereavement. And almost praying for help, asking for help. And in fact, at the beginning of Red Dress, she's had enough and she doesn't know what to do. And she sort of flippantly hands her life over to God, almost not believing in God and not really believing anything will happen. And then slowly from that point of kind of, surrender, if you like, and choosing, I want something different. I'm not happy. Something's wrong. I'm going to choose to do something about it. Then the pathway opens up. And it opens up through her beginning to listen to herself. She's taking two paths, really, because on the one hand, she herself is a therapist, a psychotherapist and hypnotherapist, and she's going to have some counselling and therapy sessions with her supervisor, who's a character called Terry, and he's a sort of sounding board for her to explore what she's thinking and feeling. And then at the same time, she's following this spiritual path because she meditates, she does yoga, she's a Reiki master. And this whole spiritual side is unfolding. And from all of this, she begins to hear this benevolent voice, which is a loving, kind voice, which is guiding her, sharing wisdom with her. And thus begins her journey of unfolding.
Thus begins her journey of unfolding. You just said it so beautifully. Terry her supervisor is a sounding board. And I think what a lot of us don't realize is that we have this true voice deep within, but it's often covered up by all these other voices, which we sometimes call the mother, father, boss, brother, sister, but these are also programs. These are voices that people give us. You're not beautiful. You're not smart. These are also voices in our head, which causes at times confusion for many people. So how do you go about this delicate balance between all these voices that have shaped us, trying to find our new voice? And isn't it funny that sometimes or often at the beginning when we step out onto the journey, it is the book, it is the voice, it is the boy. There's a character called Shanti. There are the friends. It's their wisdom or their advice, again, their voice that inspires us, that brings us to a different vibrational level where we're willing to risk or jump and do something crazy, such as a tarot session or a soma session or a soul contract session, not because we thought about it ourselves, but because somebody spoke to us in a way that touched us so deeply that we were absolutely inspired to go follow this next adventure. It's like little red threads sometimes.
Absolutely. Golden thread. I always think it's a golden thread that you're following.
Yeah, beautiful.
But when you said about, I absolutely agree with you that something inspires. It's like something drops and just it takes your attention. And it could be a song, or it could be a quote, or it could be some little meme that you've seen, or an interview that you've listened to. It could be anything, and it's almost always some form of voice, even if it's the written word. But I would say if we're going on that theme of voice and sound, it's a resonance. There's a resonance, and it resonates with you because each person has their own individual path. And it alludes to that as well in Red Dress, where she talks about how they're all shoals of fish swimming through crystal waters, but all making their way to the light. There's certain points where you meet. You might have read the same book, or gone to the same lecture, or heard the same podcast, but your journey will not be the same as somebody else's, because you're being guided by your soul to what resonates for you. So I think the authentic voice rings true. And it resonates deeply with the heart and the soul. And so we have an almost instant knowing when that authentic voice comes through. Whereas the other voices, the programmed voices, which I would say are the critical voices or the small self, and it absolutely is the conditioning. And again, it goes into the bone circle, where we look at 12 key core beliefs that we've all been programmed into. And they're all the things like, I'm not good enough, I'm not powerful enough, I'm not worthy, I don't belong, all of these sorts of things. They are normally heard as, the parent or the school teacher or somebody. And they're often, they're critical, they're doing us down. And it's a narrative in the mind, whereas the authentic voice is much more it comes with a feeling of joy, comes with this resonant truth, I think. We understand that it's a higher truth. So there's a real difference in the feeling and frequency and resonance of the authentic voice versus the programmed voice.
There is a huge difference, and then comes this exciting moment where we get to really stay truthful to allowing ourselves to be so blissful and so deeply excited about life, right? I think that is the thing that a lot of times we get so nervous because it's so illogical at times. We're like, oh my God, it's like, I can't do that. I can't go to the Himalayas and climb the mountain. I can't fall in love with this guy. He's totally the opposite of what I ever wanted or whatever I believed. And these things come up in the book, right? How finally I feel that truth. I feel what I'm doing is right. And yet I have built up so many other things in my life. How can I keep that balance? How can I keep that harmony? How can I respect my marriage, my connection with my children, etc., while my whole being is screaming to, who knows, wear a miniskirt and listen to rock and roll, or to fly over to Hawaii and swim with the dolphins, right? But Bridget, hold your thought. We're going to continue. We're going to take a very, very short break, and then we'll be back with more of the Red Dress.
Thank you.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at OMTimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
With happy clients all over the world, Kara Johnstad knows that your voice is the missing link to more authenticity, abundance, creativity, and health. An internationally acclaimed voice expert, Kara's breakthrough methods have helped thousands of people successfully heal their voice wounds and extinguish the story of self-doubt and shyness forever. Join in group trainings, attend online sessions, schedule one-on-one time, and invite Kara to work with your organization and community. Get started today. Go to www.karajohnstad.com and receive a special guided meditation designed to fine-tune your inner voice and welcome you on the voice journey.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. I am your host, Kara Johnstad, and with me in studio is Bridget Finklaire. She is a spiritual teacher. She is an author. We're talking about her new book, The Red Dress, or it's actually called Red Dress. Bridget, we were talking about the inner voice and vibrational wellness and resonance. One of your specialties is to help people tap into their intuition. How do you do that? We were talking about before the break that we feel that we're in alignment with our soul purpose. We have the sensation that comes in when we're resonating with what's true for us, and yet it can create so much confusion. We can become so topsy-turvy because it's so much energy coming in that is awakening all of our senses at the same time. So how do you help people, number one, find their true voice or tap into their intuition? And number two, how do you support them in not falling off into a deep end or off the edge of a cliff, and really integrate. I would say, I was going to throw this out there. What a lot of people talk about heart-brain coherence, and a lot of people talk about the heart field, and what I think a lot of people don't realize is the power of the voice, that it is an integrator, and it's located between this emotional heart field and the clarity of the mind, right? And I think that is this, how do we integrate when we awaken and we feel this amazing life force that starts to run through us, and we also are aligned so much that we have synchronicities happening left and right. That happens in Red Dress often, that she'll hear a song that, like you said, she'll feel she'll read a quote. Things that just start falling into place naturally. And at the same time, we need to integrate all the systems that we've already built up. So what is your role also as a therapist, not only as the author of Red Dress, but how do you support people to do that?
That's the billion-dollar question, really, because it goes back to how we have this kind of higher, luminous, creative, pure spirit, which is our heart, which we would give voice to, because that's the authentic voice, which is connected to soul and connected to source. And then we have this sort of smaller self, which was really the ego, and the programmed self. And that programmed self, the smaller self, its main job is to keep you safe, to keep you in the comfort zone, to keep you with everything that's familiar. And then your luminous self is wanting you to awaken, to follow the synchronicities, to allow things to unfold, to follow your bliss, to quote Joseph Campbell. And so really the whole thing is a hero's journey, because we're faced with our own fears. We're confronted with all the things we should do or shouldn't do or were told not to do. As you said, you want to go to Hawaii and swim with the dolphins. Okay, but I can't do that. And the I can't do that bit is the programmed small self, the critical voice that's telling you. And it will try to sabotage you when you go for your heart. When you go for your heart and your truth, it pops up and goes, you can't do that. And it'll tell you why you can't do that. And it's actually very difficult. In fact, it's impossible to ever really get rid of that voice. All you can do is acknowledge it and go, yeah, I hear you, but I'm going to act in favor of my truth. So really your authentic voice or your intuitive voice, your intuitive knowing, the bliss that you were talking about, is illogical. It nearly always is illogical because it comes from the spiritual mind. It comes from the right brain, the spiritual mind, which is illogical. It's intuitive. The logic comes from the left brain. So it does seem illogical, but there's actually normally a crazy logic to it. So the small self is desperately trying to stop you, and the greater self is desperately trying to get you to do it. And there is this inner conflict. And all you can do is understand that your intuitive knowing, the bliss, the thing that seems crazy to do, is your true north. That's your true compass. That's your true north. That's what's true for you. And it's about having the courage to take that adventure. So he who dares wins, or she who dares wins. And the universe applauds action. So you've always got this choice within the hero's journey and the heroine's journey. You've either got this choice of staying in the comfort zone and staying safe and staying in this stifled life, really, where you're not fully expressing yourself. And you may be safe, and you may be able to tick all those boxes of success, but you're dying inside, you're stuck inside, you're not in that space of joy. Or you take the risk, you have the courage to take the risk to go on that adventure. Now, how do I deal with that? How do I help people with that? In terms of the therapy work I used to do, I don't really, since I moved to Cape Town, which was 9 years ago, I very rarely, I don't say I never, but I very, very rarely work now as a therapist or psychotherapist. I still use some of my tools and techniques. Was doing a lot of one-to-one work, but I'm really now focusing on working with circles. So this is why it's the bone circle. And there is the answer really to how we get through this, because you can't do it alone. If you think of any hero's journey, if you think of, say, Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or The Matrix, they never go on that adventure on their own. Harry Potter can't do it without Hermione, and I can't remember the other guy's name. He can't go on that journey on his own. He needs his friends with him to support him and be there for him. And it's the same with us. It's very difficult to cut that path alone. So you need your circle of friends around you. And this is why we work together. So that's how we keep people on the path, because this is the encouragement of the group and also the intuitive knowing of the group, which is able to go, I know you're freaking out because, you know, you've got to leave all of this behind, this structure that you've created, but we're here to confirm, if you like, and reflect back to you that the authentic voice and the intuitive knowing is correct, and you need to follow it, and you've got to have the courage to do it. So that group of people will be helping you. And then how do you coach people to do that? Well, there's a lot of ways that you can get in touch with your intuition. And I think the further you go on any kind of spiritual journey of awakening, the more you're deepening your intuition, because you're raising your consciousness, which means you're getting a bigger, higher perspective. So if you do any kind of thing that puts you into a flow state, whether that's music or writing or anything creative, or whether that's meditation or Tai Chi or yoga or just going out in nature, you'll go more and more and more into resonance with your intuition. Within the bone circle, I actually train people to tap into their intuition at will. So we go through a whole process, a meditation process, which takes you into a space of innocence or in no sense. And then you can anchor and tap into that at will and tap into your intuition. So there's a whole protocol, which I teach people, to tap in at will. But also things happen intuitively when we're not really thinking. So it's when you're gone for a walk, or you're sitting at the lights in your car, or you're taking a shower, or you're walking the dog on the beach, or it's those things, or you're washing the dishes. It's the times when you're not really using your logical mind that these ideas drop in. And those are the ones to take note of. When you're kind of daydreaming and you're sitting at the traffic lights, or you're walking on the beach and you have this idea and you think that's crazy, don't dismiss it. And also in the morning, we can do that with things like the Artist's Way, when they do the journaling in the morning pages. If you can go to bed with a problem and say, look, subconscious, can you please help me understand this. And you just ask and you go to bed, and often in the morning you'll have the answer. If you don't just get up and switch your phone on, if you get up and sit and write, or just sit and meditate, or just sit and look out the window, very often those answers will come. So these are all ways to tap into that intuitive knowing, which is inherent in all of us. We've all got it. It's just about listening to that still small voice within.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why people don't hear that true voice is that they are not giving the space needed, like you said, to take the walk in the woods. That is very clear also with Katie in the book. She is so time scheduled to every 2 minutes. I mean, it's like, here we're going to put on the blender, here we're going to get the coffee, we're going to grab the tube, we're going to whatever. And as soon as we start making, even if it's 5 minutes to whatever it is, to sit at the piano, to go meditate, to take that walk, then we will start coming back into that flow space, which is gorgeous. Yeah. I mean, it is really gorgeous. I have here also listed morning pages. I saw something interesting the other day. Somebody did their morning pages, and it was the first time I saw that they kept on turning it 90 degrees when they finished the page. So in the end, they had this beautiful ink hieroglyphics, on the page. They couldn't read, but they were tapped into this incredibly deep stream of consciousness without being able to go back and hook into any of the words and give them any kind of meaning. I thought that was I thought it was profoundly beautiful. They just took this page and they just wrote on one. They turned it 90 degrees, kept on writing the page, turned it again. Fantastic. Nelson Mandela said, and I think it's actually a quote that comes from Marianne Williamson, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, but that we are powerful beyond measure. But maybe Marianne Williamson said that we're not afraid of our light, or we're not afraid of our darkness. We're actually afraid of our light. Why are we so nervous and often afraid of our beauty, of our power? Why is it easier to hide and say, I'm the self-worth problems, I'm not really special, I'm actually, the dolphins in Hawaii, they're it's not good for the climate for me to take planes. Why is it so hard for us to be that expansive and that juicy and that orgasmic?
That's a brilliant question, and I do love that quote. And I think it was Mandela quoting from
Marianne Williamson.
Marianne Williamson, thank you. I beg your pardon. Yeah. And it's a fabulous quote, and it's a really deep question, and I guess we could go into this in lots of different ways, but what just comes to mind while you're talking about it is it goes back to that conditioned voice again, doesn't it? Because we want to fit in. We'll grow up and we want to fit in. We want to fit in the family. We want to fit in at school. We don't want to shine our light and stick out, because we don't want people to be jealous of us or try and tear us down or knock us down or throw stones at us. We want to kind of keep a low profile and fit in. And I think we're very, very susceptible to peer pressure in that small self. And I think it's not socially acceptable, is it, in some societies, to shine. It's that tall poppy syndrome. If you grow higher than everybody else, they're going to cut you down. I think there's meanness and jealousy that can play out, and so we can be acutely aware of other people being jealous of us. It's big-headed, it's egotistical. Who are we to do that? We're too small. So there's a kind of creates this false humbleness, where we believe we have to be meek and mild and humble, and we misinterpret that to believe it means that we have to hide our light under a bushel. We have to not shine. We have to be small and stay small and be seen and not heard and stay in our place. Otherwise, we'll rock the boat. And in many ways, in Red Dress, Katie rocks the boat a little bit with her book circle friends where she lives. She's rocking the boat because they're conforming to what's expected of them. And she's breaking out of that shell or that limitation, that cage, if you like, of having to conform. And she's going, no. And she's aware that other people may be judging her for that. And I think we do. The ego is quite, in many cases, damaged and fragile. And so it doesn't want to be judged. It doesn't want other people to go, oh, she's got above her station. She's got too big for her boots. Look at her going and shining her light. We don't want to do that. We want to be loved. This is the nature of the ego self, the small self, the conditioned self, just wants to be loved. And of course, the greater self knows it is love. And it's always loved unconditionally by the divine. So it's this, again, another conflict between us. But I suspect that's why people don't feel that they can shine their light. And they've kind of been told all their life, you've got to sit down and behave and fit in at school. You mustn't talk and you mustn't do this. It's always a list of shoulds and shouldn'ts that we learn and that begin to program us. And one of the things, we shouldn't sit out of line and outshine other people. So I think that's where it comes from, really. It's that small self trying to keep us safe again.
Yeah, it's a small, exactly. The safety is there. Exactly. And if people want we're asked to be the very, very best, let's say in our class, but I know myself that if you are the A student and you are successful and people don't like you, you're not really invited. not always, because they then feel inadequate next to you. So we're going to give you a juicy question right before the break. Talking about wanting to be loved. So many adults, put it like this, long for a fulfilled sex life, and very few are happy with it. And after the break, you're going to tell us why that is. Okay?
Okay.
So many people they want it. They want it, but they can't seem to get it.
Okay.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
The United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. At the Equal Justice Initiative, we believe mass incarceration has to end. There is this presumption of dangerousness and guilt that gets assigned to Black and brown people. We have to confront our history of racial injustice and commit to a new era of truth. There's something better waiting for us, something that feels more like freedom. Truth can inspire change. Please learn more at eji.org.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. I'm your host, Kara Johnstad. With me in studio today is Bridget Finklaire. She's a spiritual teacher. She's an author, and we're talking about her new book, Red Dress. Bridget, I asked you a lovely question before the break. Your main characters in the red dress, they both are in marriages and both, of course, at some point loved their partners and got married, have children, and yet somehow feel that they're struggling with intimacy, with having a fulfilled sex life. Why do so many people long for intimacy and yet feel that it's not working out?
That's a fabulous question. And I think, again, it's probably a multifaceted one. And I think within Red Dress, it's partly because they're married to the wrong... Well, in the case of Katie, she's married to the wrong person. And she knows that somewhere, but it hasn't come out yet. And in fact, Red Dress is part of a trilogy, and you'll find out more about this in the sequel. So you'll find out more about this in the sequel. And I won't give away about the other character. You'll have to read Red Dress to find out. But to go back to your question, so I think sometimes it's just because you're with the wrong partner, because there's a pressure to get married to the right person that your mum and dad think you should get married to, or somebody who's successful or got money who can support you, or whatever it is, or somebody who's good looking. Sometimes you're just in the wrong relationship. Maybe you met too young, all kinds of reasons. There is a saying in therapy that if your sex life isn't working, change your partner, and that normally fixes it. But that's a flippant remark, because actually that's not always the case. But it just to highlight that sometimes it's just because you're with the wrong partner. But I think it really, modern society has a problem here, because we've got this huge kind of media image and advertising and films and image of what an intimate sex life ought to be like. And it's kind of like this airbrushed perfection of what it should be like to have this intimate sex life. And so there's this massive expectation that's placed upon us all the time. And, you know, we're bombarded by these images and stories, and all of the senses really are bombarded with how it should be, how your sex life should be, how your intimate life should be. And of course, in a lot of people's lives, they're very stressed actually, and they are looking after children, and they are dealing with financial issues, or right now they're dealing with lockdown, or they're dealing with sickness or bereavement, and all of these other traumatic experiences that life throws at us that causes us to suffer. And when you're stressed out and tired, and you know things are happening in your life, your libido tends to peter out a little bit. You know, it lowers down in most cases. Another thing is that when you first meet somebody and you fall madly in love with them, the sex is nearly always great, because you're in love and you're fueled by all these chemicals that have been triggered within your physiology. But that actually dies down after sort of, I don't know, I can't remember how long it takes. It's not very long. It's something like 9 months it starts to wilt, and then after 18 months it's kind of gone. And so if you've been married for sort of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, of course, that initial fuel that started the fire of sexuality is not necessarily there in that way. So what has to take over is a deeper love, a much deeper love and respect and compassion and friendship for your partner has to take over. And that's where true intimacy comes in, when you can be vulnerable. So I think we're often wounded in relation to our own sexuality. We can be through our culture or through religion. We can be wounded into that. We've been made to feel guilty or ashamed in some cases. I also think that a lot of us are wounded in relation to our body. There's a lot of body shaming that goes on. You know, we're expected to be like those impossible airbrushed models, and then even they're not like that. You know, it's all been airbrushed. Then we sort of think, oh my goodness, I've got cellulite and I've got lumpy and I'm curved, and my belly hangs over the top of I've got my muffin top or whatever it is. And so then we feel dissatisfied with ourselves, and we don't feel very sexy and gorgeous and lovely. And I think we've got to get past this kind of airbrushed media image that's thrown at us of how it's expected to be, and move much deeper into being fully present. But the other thing is, with sexuality, we're bombarded as well by pornography, which is stimulating a whole different sort of side of sexuality. But when you're in an intimate relationship, actually it's not those things that are fueling that sex life. It's often your love for your partner, the intimacy of that partner. And often when you look at your partner, it's the little quirky things that make them different, isn't it? That make you love them. You know, that little smile wrinkle that they have, you know, those grey hairs that they're getting now, you know, because you love them. And so it's the love of your partner that's guiding you to want to be close to them, and then opening your heart fully to be intimate with them. And it's in that being fully present in your body, rather than hating your body, with your partner because you love them and not because you feel you ought to be with them or any other reason. And in that space of love and intimacy and being fully present, springs at the truth of a sex life, the truth of intimacy, which then becomes fulfilling. And I also think there's expectations on us that, we've got to be having a fabulous sex life every night of the week. And actually think about your own rhythms, particularly women. We're run by rhythms. Our monthly rhythms, even after menopause, are there. And also age and time of life and what's going on. So I think a lot of it is just people putting huge expectations of themselves and thinking that this glossy thing that they've been given is real, and it's not. So I think the way towards a more fulfilling sex life is to, first of all, be more open with your partner, communicate with your partner, and really feel that love that you have for them while you're with them. Allow yourself to be vulnerable and intimate, love your own body, and be in the moment and be sensual with it. And then there you're heading towards a more fulfilled sex life.
That is so true. Although a question pops up in my mind. I mean, you were talking about Katie in the book that she might just be with the wrong partner. But many people also do communicate with their partners, but feel not heard. This also goes back into the voice thing of the fifth chakra of listening and also being able to speak. So I think, these are very complex things. That's why we are excited about your sequel to the book, because there are many people and it doesn't matter if it's in a marriage or, if we jump out of the sexuality question and just go in general, that feel their truth, that are living their truth, that are going for their passions, that are highly creative, and yet they might even be making ripples in the world, but their voice is falling on deaf ears often. And so the question would be, why do people often feel attracted to emotionally unavailable people?
I think people would be attracted to emotionally unavailable people because there's some scarring from childhood. It's nearly always some scarring from childhood. So perhaps, if you're a woman and you're attracted to emotionally unavailable men, it could be that your father was emotionally unavailable. Obviously that goes for whatever sexual orientation you are. So often it's a wounding. It's not getting that stuff in childhood, and then it becomes normal and comfortable to be around people, to have your primary intimate relationships, which is with your parents and your siblings, really, to have your primary intimate relationships with someone or people who are not demonstrative, who are not open-hearted, who are not listening and are not emotionally available. You close down your emotional availability, or then it becomes very needy and you really need that because you're not getting it, but you've learned to live without it and that feels normal. So then subconsciously, the subconscious is an incredibly powerful part of us. And I don't think we realize how powerful we are as creators, but when we're not aware, we're creating things that we don't want. So those patterns that were instilled in childhood, we recreate them over and over till we wake up to them and learn them and unhook them from the past and heal them, which is kind of where my life as a therapist comes in, which is to go back and unhook those traumas and understand that, and then be able to let that go and have the courage to choose something different.
Beautiful.
So I think that's how that dysfunction comes in. It's that in any relationship, relating is hugely important, isn't it? If you think about we're all one, we're heading towards unity.
Yes.
And we are sociable beings. We don't survive on our own. No man is an island. So relationships are the stuff of life, whether they're friendships or any kind of relationship. And I believe that relationships come into our life for us to learn something about ourselves, because that relationship is always reflecting or showing us something within ourselves.
Yes, yes. Bridget, you have many references of music in your book. So the characters in the book, they're listening sometimes to music. Maybe they're at a pub, or maybe they're at home, or maybe Katie's cleaning the kitchen. What is your own connection to music? And in your creative process, are you listening to music while you're writing, or do these songs just pop into your head while you're developing the characters?
Oh, I love music. I'm a real muso, I'm afraid. I don't play any instrument, but I really love music, and I have a quite eclectic taste in music as well, for quite a wide range. So I do listen to a lot of music in the car, and more recently in the last few years, because of the spiritual work that I'm doing with the Keys of Enoch, because I also facilitate a study for the Keys of Enoch, and I'm a teacher for the Academy for Future Science. I tend to listen to quite a lot of sacred music now and sacred chants, because I know it's raising my vibration, protecting me. So I tend to listen to that. But often when you're writing, that muse comes in and you are connected to some greater creative force, really. And so that a lot of these ideas were coming in as I wrote the book to use those pieces of music. But they were also, for the most part, not for everyone, but for the most part, they were genuinely bits of music that I myself have listened to in the past or have enjoyed. So, yeah, so it's part inspiration and partly that I do listen. And sometimes I do listen to music in the background, but it's normally too intrusive if it's something that I know, because I'll start singing along to that and thinking about that rather than writing. It's much better to have something like solfeggio frequencies or, you know, Stephen Halpert and something like that, you know, like a wash type thing in the back, or the Holy Om or something that's...
Or something without... Yeah, something without a steady beat or without without lyrics. I think whenever I hear something with lyrics, I start writing the lyrics, right?
I
don't know how people... I start singing along and then suddenly, you have been on the spiritual journey for many decades. What are some of the challenges that you faced as you've come into your full potential and awakened to what you're meant to give to humanity?
I think the challenges never really stop once you start this journey, because you think you've gone past the worst of them, and then they kind of another layer comes up to hit you. So there's always more that you're unaware of, which is why we say it's the shadow, because we don't see it. So I think, you know, we don't see it. So we think, oh yes, well, I've done my work, I'm on my path now, I know what. No, you know, it's never ending. I suspect that you just keep going. So there's always challenges. And I think the further we go, the more, so, you know, I don't know whether the more there are challenges, but there's just always challenges. And I think what happens is we get better at facing them. So I think, you know, obviously, Katie in the book, there's some of me in Katie, there's some of me in Shanti, and there's some of me in the voice. And there's some of the events of Katie's life are semi-autobiographical for me. So a lot of things for me were about owning it, really. Saying, okay, putting my hand up and saying, well, no, actually, I've got this spiritual journey and I believe, you know, all this whole other vast understanding of a greater cosmology and beings of light and different dimensions of consciousness and awareness and frequencies and vibrations and energies and growth, and the soul is here to grow and we're here for a path and all of the things that go with the spiritual journey. My father was an engineer, and I grew up with brothers, and they were all fairly, you know, working with just the five senses, not going beyond that. And so there was always going to be a lot of ridiculing from my family for me stepping into a spiritual path. And yes, and, you know, working as a Harley Street therapist in London, you know, and then you go, oh, well, I've got this healing couch and I'll just give you a healing for your fertility problem rather than do any therapy with you. And so there's that as well, and overcoming the ridicule that you're going to get from your peers who are still very much towing the psychotherapy line, where I was moving further and further and further away from that into working energetic. So those sorts of things were challenging. And I think at the beginning of the journey, it's like you were saying, you know, you hear the call of your authentic voice, you hear the call of your heart, you know you want to follow your bliss, you're excited, but it feels logical, and you think, I can't do this. And that's really the most difficult part, I think, because you've got to step onto that path. And then, as you also pointed out, you know, you want to go and swim with the dolphins in Hawaii, but you're supposed to be staying here with, and so there's that conflict. And so those are the challenges, is to overcome the conflict and to listen to the intuitive voice, the authentic voice, and the knowing, and go, no, this is my true north. And knowing that you will go into confusion, you will go into chaos, and you will start to doubt yourself, and you will have moments where you go, what the heck am I doing? I mean, I followed my intuition to come to live in South Africa. Now, I'd lived in England all of my life, and I'd never been to South Africa in my life. Now, my brother had been, and my parents had been, but I had never been. I knew friends who were South African, and everybody kept saying, no, you'll love it there. But I had to take that leap of faith. I rented out my flat in London when I first arrived. I literally rented out my flat in London. I resigned from my therapy practice in Harley Street, finished, sewed up the loose ends with my client, and jumped on a plane with a suitcase to arrive in a country I'd never been in. And it's scary. And all the time, I'd given up, and I was packing up my flat, and I was booking the flight, and it was getting nearer and nearer, and I had to just organize everything, and I was panicking, and I was starting to think, I'm ruining my life here. I've just made it to the top of my profession. I've got a beautiful flat in London. I have all my friends here and all my family here. And I'm about to go and completely ruin my life by everything that's taken me years to build up. I'm going to completely say goodbye to it all, rent out my beautiful flat, go live in a backpacker's lodge in Cape Town. Yeah. And it seemed completely crazy. And those sorts of things are challenges. Even when I sort of got intuitively, you're going to write a novel, you start writing it, and then you think, what am I thinking? I don't know anything about this. So there's that panic when you first start following the voice and of your own intuitive wisdom. But eventually, I think you learn that there is going to be that challenge, there is going to be that doubt, and your voice is going to go, I think you might have made a mistake. And you learn to acknowledge that you've heard it, but you're not going to act on it. Because you go, oh, yeah, I've heard that old chestnut before. Okay, yeah, I'm not good enough. I'm the silly little girl who doesn't know anything. That's fine. I've heard that old story before, and I know it's not true. So thank you for telling me that, but I'm going to carry on with my path. So I think those are the challenges that come up for me.
Fabulous. Bridget, it's been a treat to have you here today with me at Voice Rising. Thank you so much for your Red Dress book, and also for everything that you're giving back, and for your circles that you're doing. For anybody who's interested, you can check out Bridget Finklaire's work, and she's doing the Bone Circle, which is great. Like you were saying, together we're stronger. Together we're in relationship. And it's exciting times to have incarnated here on the earth, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kara. Thank you for having me. Bless you. It's been absolutely amazing. I've so enjoyed the interview. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye now.